I'm Bill Williams, and I'm here to brighten your day. I've owned a Cut Above Video production since 1988, and lighting has been one of my stronger suits. I've started playing around with lighting when I was in high school for stage lighting and got involved with doing amateur films and ultimately the video business. And over the years have collected a lot of different lighting equipment. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is the basics of lighting. How can you make your project look better by getting the lighting right? So the first thing I want to talk about is the quality of light. There are different kinds of lighting fixtures. This particular one is an ellipsoid fixture and named for the type of reflector that is in the back of the light fixture. And it creates a small light source. It is a very focused light source, very controllable. And the advantage of this type of light is it creates a very distinct shadow. It's a rather sharp light. It's same type of light you would get from the sun. The sun is a very large source, but it's very far away. So it's going to create a relatively harsh shadow. So this can come in handy for some situations, especially when you want to very accurately control where the light falls. The opposite end of the spectrum is a soft light. It is a light fixture in the back of this unit, but through the diffusion that's in the front of that light, it creates a much softer light, which is actually what we're using in the studio right now. Another type of soft light is an LED light panel. That can be used just like a large soft light. The color of light is also very important. There's daylight balanced, and as an LED fixture might be, or LED fixtures can also be indoor light balanced. Then there's a practical light, like a light you might find in a lamp fixture. The color temperature of an incandescent light is between 2300 and 3300 degrees Kelvin, and color temperature is measured in degrees Kelvin. For reference, at noon, shooting outside on a bright sunny day, the color temperature is about 5600 degrees Kelvin. When you're indoors using studio lighting, the temperature is between 3000 and 3200 degrees Kelvin. So depending on where you are and what kind of lighting you're using, the color of light will be different. In this case, this type of a fixture is typically around 2800 degrees Kelvin. And that's found in practical fixtures, lamps at home. Though now with transition to what was compact fluorescents for a while were popular, LED lamps now are becoming very popular, and they can be in multiple color temperatures. And so to match that, you might have a little more of a challenge. So let's look at color temperatures here just for a couple of different reference points. We'll start with a blue sky is about 10,000 degrees or higher color temperature. A cloudy day might be 5,700 to 10,000 degrees Kelvin. A bright sunny day is about 5,600 degrees Kelvin. A halogen lamp that you would find in a home fixture is about 3,000 degrees. These studio lights are about 3,200 degrees Kelvin. And an incandescent lamp that you might find in a home lamp is 2,800, and a candle about 1,900 degrees. Some chaos you may encounter are outdoor lighting. Though a lot of street lights are now being converted to LED fixtures, you will still find these odd color lights outside. This is a sodium light, puts out a very yellow light. If you're trying to fight this, you're going to have trouble. You can never white balance on this thing because it's missing blue. So you've just got chaos. If you want somebody to look good under this kind of a lighting fixture, you're going to have to add your own light to fill in that missing blue. Similarly, this is an outdoor street light that's a mercury vapor lamp. It puts out an excessive amount of blue. So to make this look good, you're going to have to fill in with some reddish colored light because you will never get this to white balance correctly. This is an office fluorescent light. They are notoriously got a green tinge to them. They may come in different color temperature ranges from 3,400 degrees Kelvin, 4,500 degrees Kelvin, and 55, I think you can get. So when you buy these fluorescent tubes, they come in different color temperatures. None of them are ever going to be really good. The theater, the ones designed for video lighting, those like a Kinoflow light, that will have a good color temperature. These type of fixtures that you find in commercial office buildings are not well color balanced. They're going to be a little bit green typically, and maybe biased toward the blue or biased toward the red, but always with a little bit of green. And to color correct for these, you either put gels on these fixtures or gels on the fixtures you're using to supplement the lighting to make all that light balance. In some cases, you can just overpower these with the lights that you're using or just turn these lights off. LED fixtures designed for consumer use come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and different color temperatures. When we use them to replace practical lights, we get the dimmable kind and get a couple of different color temperatures, basically 3200 and 5600 degrees Kelvin. Get those two different varieties of lights, put dimmers on them, you can solve 95% of the problems you'll encounter in the field. Remember, you need to get a dimmable version of an LED light. The non-dimmable versions you cannot dim, they just burn out. So, different purposes of different kind of lighting fixtures. We've got a key light. Key light happens to be in this configuration that we're looking at right now, over there. And the key light is the brighter of the lights. It defines me, and it is the most important light because that's providing really the majority of light on me right now. The next light is the fill light. That's coming from over here. Now, they're at different angles. They don't have to be, but in this case they are. This one is a little bit higher. It's about 30 degrees. This one on the left is about 15 degrees. And the reasoning behind that is that this light its major purpose is to fill in the shadows and also to help eliminate any wrinkles and any pits that might be in the skin. As I've mentioned, there's, we were using soft lights, and soft lights tend to wrap around any imperfections and therefore fill in the pits and valleys and bumps and so forth to make them less noticeable. And we've done one more trick here, which is that we've used an additional fourth light. Well, actually, we've got more than four. We've used a light down below here that's a big soft light that's reflecting up here to fill in down here so that my chicken neck's not so horrible. Backlight. What we're talking about is three-point lighting, which would be three light fixtures. We're actually using two backlights in this situation, and it is to provide a lighting to define the edge relative to the background. So in this case, we're trying to separate me from the background by having a light from behind, giving a little bit more of a depth, a little bit more definition to where I am relative to the background. We are using two, and this one over here has got an orange gel on it to offset the blue splash coming from the screen. So that's the basic configuration for three-point lighting, where the key light, this one, provides the dominant light. The fill light is providing the fills so that this side is not too dark. And you can play with the fill light going all the way to nothing, all the way up to bright to make it more flat, to create different effects. And the backlight to separate the object from the subject, myself in this case, from the background. We're using background lighting to define the background. There are some lights that are on this blue background. Cooler colors will separate the talent from the background. So in this case, because I'm reddish colored, we're using a blue background, which generally works well, to kind of make me look more from the foreground than I would be if I were just, if this were a beige background, for an instance. I would blend in more with the background. Often cooler colors, too, will contrast a talent, a speaker, because humans tend to be reddish, brownish, pinkish, and so if we put a bluish color in the background, that's going to be a different color. Sometimes patterned. There's a slight pattern to this background. Just makes it a little more interesting, less flat. And colored. We use gray sometimes. This case we're using blue. Sometimes there's a practical light in the background, meaning a light fixture that's part of the set. That can also be in an art element, something to make your background look more interesting. But if you do have practical lights in the background, sometimes you have to control it, as we talked about, putting dimmers on it, changing lamps and whatever. Special effect patterns, which are known as gobos or cookies, are commonly used. And the first lighting fixture I showed you was an ellipsoid. That is a very defined light, a very controlled light. You have gobos you can slip in those fixtures that will put a pattern on the background. And that's very useful for a lot of situations. Gels and color correction. We have a whole roll of gels that we carry with us when we go out in the field sometimes. I call it my party roll. It's just all kinds of colors. We don't use them a lot, but every once in a while, that little splash of color, that something that needs to really pop. Perhaps a tree is not green enough. We'll put a slight green gel on it. Whatever it takes, we've got the color. We can make it look the way we want it to look. So we've got color correction gels, which typically would be correcting sunlight or indoor light to match. So there's correction to blue or color temperature blue. I've heard it both ways. So that would be a bluish gel to take a quartz lamp that's 3200 and make it closer to 5600 to match sunlight, or going the other way, taking a outdoor temperature light and correcting it to orange, CTO, or color temperature orange. And that would be an orange gel to make the bluish light look more like an incandescent light. An important thing to remember is that you generally want to correct the lighting fixture that is not color balanced with the other sources in the scene to be that color temperature. So if you've got if you're shooting with daylight balanced lights and you've got a practical light that has got a incandescent bulb in it, it's going to look very orange in the set. So you'd probably want to take that lamp and replace it with an LED lamp that was daylight balanced. That's the easiest way to solve that problem. So you want your color temperatures of the lighting you're using to be balanced, to be similar, unless you're going for a special effect. Here, we're looking at using gels and color effects to enhance the look of this woman relative to the background. So this would be a case where I would use my party gels to light the background to get this kind of an effect. You can do this with lighting fixtures, or perhaps there's a painting or art or a backdrop that looks like this. In any case, this is a great opportunity to use gels to create an interesting lighting effect. Lighting fixtures and sources. The sun. The sun's my favorite because it is the best, most consistent color you're going to find. It is basically how we define color. The sun is white. And it's a very smooth white. There's not a lot of missing gaps. Yes, if you're a scientist, you might know that there are some little places where there's little bars where certain elements absorb the light. But basically, it's white. It's a very smooth light. There's no odd coloration. The color temperature can vary depending on the time of day. Heavy overcast, it can be up to 9,000 degrees Kelvin or more. At sunset, it can be down to 3,000 or less. So especially around sunset, be aware that your color temperature is changing continuously and be able to compensate for that. That's something you may want to just leave for correcting in post. Getting it as right as you can in the camera is best, as always. There are light fixtures like this one. This is an HMI light, and it is balanced to sunlight. These light fixtures are kind of expensive. And so they're not used in small shoots very often, but on larger shoots, especially film shoots, you'll see some very large HMI fixtures, 10,000, 15,000 watt fixtures, very large. And they basically can fight the sun. We use them sparingly because of their size and their weight, but they do solve problems sometimes. And if using reflectors outside doesn't work, or if you don't know what the weather's going to be and you might have a cloudy situation and you need to pop something with HMIs with a big light source, these are the solution. Kineflow, these are professional fluorescent fixtures, are low power. They're very nice, big, soft lights. They were popular for a while. LEDs are kind of taking over for these type of fixtures, but these are still around. Typically, you can put different types of tubes in there, either daylight balanced at 5,600 degrees Kelvin or tubes at 3,200 degrees Kelvin. LED fixtures, very popular today. The prices are coming down to very affordable ranges. These are panels. They also make Fresnels. They're come in two different color temperatures typically, either 5,600 or 3,200. And then there are adjustable ones that are 3,200 to 5,600. Actually, sometimes they go down a little lower than 3,200. And then there's another type which uses red, green, and blue LEDs, so you can set just about any color you want, which is great for some special effects. In the professional world, they're not necessarily as popular because they don't put out as much light as the single temperature fixtures. So what we have, a tip, is we just have 5,600 degree panels which put out a lot of light, and it's daylight balanced. And if we have to go indoors, we put a CTO, an orange gel, in that daylight balanced fixture, and we bring it down to a quartz temperature. And we don't need as much light inside as we do outside. So that kind of works out best for us, is to just get the single type. It's the least expensive, and we get daylight balanced fixtures. Practical lights, you're going to encounter all kinds of problems with practical lights as far as color temperature goes. Just know that you're going to encounter it and fight it as best you can. And sometimes if you can't win by making it balanced, use it in an artistic way where you meant to make it look a different color. How do you control light? Well, you control it with all kinds of things. You can use reflectors. These are flex fills. They're very handy. They pop out to a big round thing or kind of a rectangular shape, and then they fold up into a small package, very easy to carry around. Very good if you're doing traveling and you need to put something small and run and gun. An excellent source, but one of my favorites is foam core. Foam core is cheap, a couple of bucks. You can get it just about anywhere. Art Supply House. And it's rigid. It doesn't flop around too much. Very handy to have. As a matter of fact, that's what we're using for a soft light to fill my chicken neck. And another cool thing you can do with foam core is if you need a cheap gobo, a cheap cookie, there it is. You can hit the microphone with it, or you can hold it up and get a pattern. And it's a cheap way to get a gobo for $2 or $3. Sometimes you need negative light. Negative light is just black, and sometimes you might be outside and it's very flat and you don't want it to look so flat. You might put a black shield next to a person to darken one side of the face. Again, just a couple of bucks. It's a piece of foam core that you can also hit a microphone with. If you want to go on the higher end and look fancy, you can get a scrim and flag kit. And they're going to be several $100s, but they're more compact. And when you go out in the field, and we've got one of these too, frankly, I use the foam core more than the scrim and flag kit, but if you want to look cool, you go out with your scrim and flag kit and you'll be a lot cooler looking, and it does offer you many more options. So I'm not putting it down. We have one. It's good. But you can do a lot of what you need to do with the scrim and flag kit. Another great way to passively control light without changing color temperature is with gels. Like I said, when you're dimming an incandescent light, you're going to change its color temperature. So if you put gels in front of that light fixture, you will not change the color temperature. And gels come in different densities to knock down different amounts of light. The other thing you can do, of course, on the camera side, you can put a neutral density filter in on your camera. Another thing you can do is gel a whole window. Neutral density filters come in big sheets, and you can put it on the glass to lower the intensity of the light coming through a window. Passive control of light. Diffusion softens, reduces shadows. That's what we're using here. Barn doors can shape the light. Barn doors on a Fresnel or an open face light, this is an open face fixture, will control somewhat where the light spills. If you really need control, the light fixture I showed earlier, the ellipsoid, is where you want to be. Another control is black wrap. Black wrap you put around a fixture to eliminate pieces of light, sections of light that are going out that you don't want to have in the scene. Motivated light source. We always want to have, if we can, reinforce a motivated light source. These are two paintings from some old masters, and there is here a motivated light source of the window splashing across these people. Here, again, there's a window splashing across these people. This situation right now, the motivated light source is to my right because we've got this bright screen to my right and dark blue to my left. So it would be odd to have the motivated light source, the stronger light coming from here. So I'm reinforcing the motivated light source. All right, let's get into some tips. Dimmers are very useful for controlling lights. We have dimmers on all the lights in the studio here. And when I go out in the field, I always carry dimmers with me to control practical lights and sometimes some field lighting I might be using. Be cautious when you're using dimmers because it does change the color of an incandescent fixture. An LED fixture, the color will remain the same. An incandescent fixture will get more orange as you dim it down. Spare household lights. I carry various wattages to replace practical fixtures when needed. It solves a lot of problems quickly by just having the right size lamp to put in a lamp and not have to worry about dimmers or color temperatures or anything. It's just fixed. Grip gear. Having a variety of grip gear. We bring milk crates of grip gear out, clamps, and CP47s, clothespins, gaffer's tape, anything that you might think you might need, bring it because you probably will need it someday. Flags, either scrim and flag kit, foam core. Almost every time we go out, we bring foam core because probably about a third of the time we need it. Bounce cards, foam core. Dulling spray. I haven't mentioned dulling spray yet. You might think, oh, dulling spray. I don't want to go out and buy dulling spray. That's going to cost $15. Well, guess what? There's a cheap way around that. Hairspray. You might be surprised I know about hairspray. But hairspray, used very sparingly, will dull something down and reduce some of the shine. Another quick trick, which is not up here on the list, but if you have a guy like me who's hair challenged and you've got shine, very often that is accentuated, exacerbated by the fact that I have oily skin. So you take a plain old paper towel, very expensive piece of material here, and you just wipe down those shiny spots. And I don't know if I got anything knocked down, but that will often knock down just enough shine to make the subject look much better. And you don't want to use dulling spray on a body like this. Don't do that. Soft lights minimize wrinkles and pockmarks and flaws in the skin. Minimize under chin shadows with a low place soft light. There's a low place soft light right down there to reduce these shadows. Some bright situations are helped by negative light. The black bounce card that I had brought out before. Bounce cards are very cheap, very easy to use, and if you have a dark-skinned person who is not, you can't light a dark-skinned person by splashing a lot of light on them. What you have to do is skip the light, reflect the light off them like a mirror. So taking a bounce card, a white bounce card placed close to a dark-skinned person will help define that person's face by putting highlights, reflecting highlights off their face. And what you're seeing really is the reflection of the white card off their face. Twinkle in the eye. We have the lights set in here so that there's a twinkle in my eye, so I look bright and cheery. If I were outside and the sun's up here or over here or something, and it's kind of cloudy, there's not going to be anything putting a twinkle in my eye. I might look dull. Finding a way, a light to do that can add a little brightness to the picture that might be subtle, but can be very appealing, especially with a woman. So to eliminate glare in glasses, what you might have to do is, if I had glasses on right now, we probably would see a little bit from this light over here, a bit of a white spot on the glasses that would be annoying because it would be very near my pupil. And so what we'd have to do is just raise that light up a little bit more, and that would probably be enough to get that glare high enough in the glasses that it wouldn't be distracting. Avoid video clipping and preserve the highlight detail by toning down bright areas. Now we do that in the studio by keeping these lights dim enough so that the glare is not excessive. Dulling spray on objects, not people. Dulling spray can be useful. The trick I said earlier about getting the greasy spots off of men can be very useful. Remember to correct color mismatches in a scene on set. It's much better than trying to fix them in post. Think about motivated sources. If there's a lamp in the scene, that's where the key light should probably be. Motivated from the practical light that's already in the scene. With chroma key situations, adding a colored gel to the background of the opposite color as the background. For example, if you're using a green background, putting a purple gel, also known as a minus green gel, in the background as your backlight, will put a purplish splash countering the greenish splash on the back of my body and neutralizing the green, therefore making it look white to the camera. So it's a little trick to minimize the color correction you'd have to do on a person in post when you're doing chroma key. Light chroma key backgrounds as flat as practical, and that's just to keep your post-production keying simpler. If you have all different shadings in the background, you can have chaos when you're trying to chroma key. When lighting talent on a chroma key background, know what that background is going to be before you do the lighting, before you do the shoot. Because if that person is standing here with the sun blasting from over here with all the shadows going this way, and you put your key light over here with the shadows going that way, it's going to look pretty stupid. So just be aware of what the background is before you shoot a chroma key image so that you can light that image to be lit as if it were in the environment you're going to ultimately place them. And one of the obvious, when you're chroma keying, make sure that whatever the talent is wearing isn't the same color or close to the same color as the background, because that will create chaos in post. It can be fixed. You can use tracking and so forth to take care of that, but why go through all that trouble if you can get it right the first time? When using chroma key, try to avoid flyaway hair. Those little wisps of hair can be very difficult to key, so if you can, control that when you're shooting. Remember, reflective or shiny surfaces will reflect your chroma key background. So if you're using a chroma key background and a shiny surface, you've got to figure out how to control that so that that color from the background isn't bouncing off the surface and hitting your camera, because that section will then chroma key out just like the chroma key background. If it's a static piece, you can mask it off and you can get away with it pretty easily. But if it's not, then if it's moving around, you're going to have all kinds of chaos to keep track of that and track it. That's making your post-production effort much more difficult. Fogging a room helps create a soft contrast and the illusion of depth. We talked about that earlier. Reds focus differently than blues. Your warmer colors appear to be more in the foreground, your cooler colors more in the background. That is a function of the way the light physically focuses within your eye. Your eye is drawn to higher contrast and sharper images. So when you're lighting, when you're focusing, keep that in mind. Keep your object of interest being the higher contrast, crisper focused image. Know what power is needed when you're going out to a location. If you're only bringing a few incidental lighting fixtures, it's probably not very critical. But if you're bringing out high-powered lights like HMIs, then you do need to know where your power is and make sure you bring enough power cords and have access to the power you need to do what you're doing. Often today, with smaller shoots, battery-powered lights are used, and that certainly makes things easier. You don't have to worry about where you're getting power. Gaffer's tape is your friend. And don't buy duct tape. Buy good gaffer's tape. That will solve more problems than you can imagine. Taping down cables, fixing just about anything that breaks. Think of it as duct tape. Duct tape can fix anything. Well, gaffer's tape can fix anything and more because it doesn't have all that goopy goo that duct tape has. Don't use duct tape. Use gaffer's tape. It's more expensive. I know that. But believe me, it's worth it. If lighting is battery powered, make sure you bring enough batteries because the last thing you want to do is have a very expensive shoot where you've got a whole lot of people involved, all messed up because your battery went dead. Clamps and CP47s, just a cute name for clothespins, CP47. We bring them out on our shoots all the time. We bring a bag of clothespins and a whole box of clamps. For clamping gels, for holding something down, for holding up cables, for holding up white cards, bounce cards, all kinds of things clamps come in handy for. So that about wraps it up. I hope this was helpful, and good lighting.